Good evening and welcome to the April 5th, 2023 Raymond Comprehensive Plan Committee. And we've called to order. I will acknowledge that we have quorum tonight. And so second on the agenda is minutes approval for March 1st, 2023. I would ask for a motion to accept unless
I move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Unanimous? All right. Number 3 on the agenda is old business. First off, something that's been carried on for a couple of agendas, but hopefully we're going to get to a conclusion tonight, and that would be the preference on a comprehensive plan logo. So Kayla, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So last month we discussed that we would go home, we would just pick our favorite and maybe come to a consensus and or at least have a lot better direction on where we want to go. So I guess I will take a very formal poll and see what everybody likes. Jackie, may I start with you?
Yes, I like the yellow and blue circle.
Danelle?
I like the orange arrow, and thought on the yellow and blue is that it's Lake Region colors, so I didn't want to get too close to that. But I also like the yellow.
Okay, so orange arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John, I can skip you if you'd like a moment to get settled.
I'd appreciate that moment.
All right.
All right. Peter?
Kayla, I like the Raymond tomorrow with the orange arrow.
Okay.
I also like the orange arrow.
Me as well.
Okay.
I like the bottom right, the house on the hilltop.
House on the hill.
I'm going with the orange arrow.
Orange arrow. I also like the orange arrow. Would you like to throw your
I would
opinion
say
into the
orange arrow.
mix? Orange arrow. Sue, did you have a favorite?
Not particularly.
All right.
I'm not a citizen, so.
Well, opinion
Yeah.
still can be taken.
Yeah, we could let you express an opinion.
I also like the picture that John liked.
Okay. Well, I would have to say that orange arrow takes it. All right, we have picked a logo, so I think we can finally move on from that. Oh, John, did I already?
But I don't like the orange arrow. We'll go with it.
We'll go with it, all right.
Very good. Well, thanks for the effort that we put into this. I think that they're all good representations. And I believe in the discussion is that we're going to kind of use this to identify in a number of communications with the community, kind of put our branding on it by having a logo. Great. Moving right along. I was pretty amazed at looking at what Sue posted on the website as far as the pictures, and also was gratified to see the ad that was in the Roadrunner, which was nice. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the pictures that were sent in. I think there was a pretty good mix of different seasonal pictures. Some of them outstanding. We got a couple of really good photographers in town. We should keep them in mind. And I believe that these pictures that we talked about were thinking about potentially going to either a short video to promote the committee and its work, and certainly down the road, I would certainly encourage if there are any other pictures that come about that we should continue to send them in on the web. And we'll have them as a kind of a reference for any other projects that we might have. But I believe that we're talking more or less using kind of that template for the was in the gray comprehensive plan and the short video with the stick figure and what is a comprehensive plan. I believe in that video, which is very short, which is good. It was they did flash pictures of gray as well, different seasonal pictures of gray, the downtown area, and then some of the landscapes. Any other thoughts as far as pictures?
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with them. I had looked through the footage that I had, and actually didn't have a lot of Raymond, so I'm a little embarrassed to say that. So I think as we kind of continue along, I'll start. Now they're getting into some nicer weather, so it's not always just frozen over lakes. I'll try to get some more footage as we get along, so if we do anything more, but I think this is a great start. So I'm glad that our citizens really were excited to send these pictures. They're all great.
Frank?
We know anyone that has a drone. It would be nice to get some drone pictures.
I'll be working on that.
I thought you might.
Chris?
Along that line, we did discuss at the last meeting that Ben Smith is a drone operator, and at some point, maybe him and Kate would kind of do the first bus tour, kind of a synopsis with me, and be able to take some of the drone photos on that trip. So I'll catch you up to speed on that. But basically, we're going to be talking about in a little bit another bus tour that we just kind of drove around Raymond and looked at the developments and building and the history and our scenic vistas and different things. And we're going to do another round of that later. And if you want to take a short trip, we can make it a little quicker with, some pictures along the way to help with video and kind of advertising and promoting what we're doing.
Great. And I did note that the pictures and the landscapes are wonderful. It wouldn't hurt, in my opinion, to have a couple of photos with families and people in them as well. Kids sliding down.
People actually live
I
here.
got a
you
good
mean?
one.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Raymond Rec.
Finch is going to send me a few more.
Yep.
One of them has one of the biggest fish I've seen that isn't a striper in it. So it was with 4 people holding said fish up that was taken out of Sebago. So
Sure. Sure.
he's going to try and get permission to use that, but he's going to send us more.
Excellent. All right, so we'll be on the lookout for those, and certainly everybody in the committee go back and look in your scrapbooks and whatever, and you may find some gems in there. All right.
Peter?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to note that I am happy we did get some community engagement back and a couple photos submitted.
Absolutely. Great. All right. Moving on the under old business, as Chris alluded to, the scheduling of the bus tour part 2. Sue, you kind of had a synopsis of that.
Yeah, April 28th, 9 a.m. at meet at Tasseltop, please. I no longer hear you folks. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, we're here.
We're all writing
We're
it
just
down.
writing it down. April 28th, 9 a.m., Tasseltop.
Yes, please.
All right.
And we'll do the second half, which is basically 302 Main Street and the Cape. Did I miss something, Chris?
We were going to look at some of the industrial zones and maybe a little bit of a loop around Thomas Pond.
That's what I was missing, yes, Thomas Pond.
Great.
Do we have a sense for the time, like how long it will be?
Last time we did, was it almost 4 hours? It was quite,
Yeah, we could do all of that.
yeah.
Okay.
Probably done 1 or 2.
And as Chris had mentioned, and it was discussed at the last meeting, certainly as far as North Star is concerned, what we found in doing that bus tour was, even though there were a majority of us have been in town 20, 30 years, there were things we hadn't seen, and it gave us a good sense of the community and what was going on. And our bus driver was from Wyndham, and she was saying, "Boy, they should do this in Wyndham."
I think she's anxious to come back and do the second half.
Yeah, great. All right, so we've got that scheduled, and we will be certainly looking at some time when the weather is a little fairer, getting out on the lake and actually taking a look at Raymond from the water as well, because I think, you know, water seems to be a constant when we talk about planning in Raymond. So we'll get that done as well. All right. The listing of community associations and businesses, and this is opened up to the committee. Sue posted some very comprehensive listings of businesses and associations in town, including addresses, mailing addresses, and telephone numbers and the like. And I believe that that's, once again, similar to getting, compiling a group of photographs for use for promotion and branding. These addresses are going to be invaluable not in the too distant future as well, as far as setting up communications with community organizations and the like, and setting up some sort of schedule with them in order to meet and discuss their concerns and their visions. I'll open up to the committee. Any other thoughts on this? Yes.
I spoke to Mark, who owns Automotive Everything on 302, and he was pretty interested in just being a part of that.
Great.
One caveat I would say to the lists I have is that we know when businesses open. We don't necessarily know when they're closed.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my staff is in the process of going through that list and trying to determine if those businesses still exist.
Excellent.
And I also contacted the Secretary of State's office to see if we could get a list of registered entities. There is a fee to get that list, and they were going to get back to me with what it might be, but I think it's at least a couple $100.
Mm-hmm.
So we can continue to look into that if we want to, but that also seemed like a great list that Sue sent out, so it may be unnecessary.
Okay. Well, certainly keep us posted.
I will. I'll keep following up.
All right, thank you. And I think as far as the outreach is concerned, certainly we'll be working with the planners as far as all that we've discussed so far. So everything from logos to branding to photographs and the like. We just figured we'd get kind of a jump start on that as far as accumulating that data and information. All right. So in what is noted in the proposal that we had from North Star was the 2 public workshops, and I believe the time frame there was for October and November of this year. So, but we were thinking in terms of beyond just a public offering where we would have invite the community at large to come in and talk with us, that this would be more targeted towards the businesses and the associations. And as was discussed at last month's meeting, we really should look into, and I may have missed it, Sue, but I didn't see any listing in particular, and I don't know that one exists, of individuals that are just summer residents. But we did talk at the last meeting about how that was something that was really not incorporated in the last comprehensive plan. And since they make up such a large segment, even though it's seasonal, that one of the things that I believe we're going to see when we start acquiring more of this demographic information is that we're getting more and more individuals, and Chris could probably testify to this, is individuals that have been summer residents that are coming here to retire and are actually converting seasonals to year-round. So I believe that their voices should be heard in this, and we want to investigate that as well.
The one thing that we may be able to do, or I may be able to do, is take the voter list. There is a file that comes out of that called the governmental use file, that if I compared that to the tax rolls and to motor vehicle and other lists that we have in the town office, I may be able to get a rough list of those that aren't voters and therefore we know they aren't residents, and that are summer visitors. Some of the summer visitors register cars here. They do a lot of other town activities, including pay taxes.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
This may be not too difficult, but I'd be putting the task on. Obviously, staff would be, you can take the big sort of spreadsheet that the tax assessor has that lists all the properties, and if you just sort of sort that out by state for mailing address, we might just get a rough idea of who's getting their tax bills out of state, which might give us an idea of who actually lives out of state versus residents. Just a thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just as a fun fact, as I was looking through the 2014 citizen survey that we had did, which is very comprehensive, back in 2014, one of the interesting observations there was a discussion about potentially non-resident voting. And so, you know, that's something that certainly in our discussions we can talk about as well a little bit, as far as you know, a property owner having a voice at the ballot box as far as ordinances and stuff go. It's an interesting concept. I don't know that it's you know, entirely an easy thing to implement.
Does it exist in the state of Maine in some municipalities?
I couldn't find any evidence of it.
I believe in Portland, they allow for some municipal referendums for non-residents to vote. I believe.
Well, that would make it that would be a
It
precedent.
wouldn't be a first, yeah.
Right.
But one of the things that Portland has that Raymond doesn't is a charter, and there are some things like, and it's possible that that falls under this category, that you can only implement via charter. You can't always implement things via an ordinance. So that would take some research and talking to our lawyers about.
Sure.
But I can look into that if you like.
That'd be great. You know, it's food for thought, and you know, once again, it's not something that necessarily a comprehensive plan would be responsible for, but certainly as a recommendation, or at least researching it and you know, bringing it to the powers that be, select board and the like. It's it can be, from my perspective, it can be a little bit of a dicey issue.
Yeah.
So it would have to be approached very, very carefully. But I think that once again, the first step would possibly be just engaging the summer residents in these meetings, workshops, and the like.
I think too, having these road association lists are good, because a lot of those associations will have their summer meetings, their annual meetings in the summertime, when they can try and capitalize on having as many residents here to attend. So I want to say, I think around like late July, you tend to see a lot of them having their annual meetings.
Sure.
We might be able to capitalize on that.
That's a good thought. Absolutely, Jackie. Yeah. All right. So anything else on the listings of the Association of Businesses, other than we kind of assembled them, and going forward, we'll know that it's a resource. Okay. Next order of business would be new business. So the status of the Comprehensive Committee composition. What I want to just inform the committee, although I'm sure everyone on committee, if not everyone on committee, knows, but at the March 16th Select Board meeting, the selectmen basically voted to accept Brad McCurtain's resignation. We did send a letter to Brad thanking him for his input and his service to the committee. And also, at the March 16th Select Board meeting, the Select Board voted to not replace Brad's position and to make this a committee of 9. Kayla attended, I attended. I spoke to this just to make it clear to the Select Board that this committee had voted to, number one, keep applications open until we had a planner on board, and at that point, we would close applications. And that we had an application that had been recommended to the select board for approval or denial onto the committee. But that became a moot point when the select board decided to reduce the size of the committee. Their reasoning was number one, and this one I can't argue. I mean, I could argue the number 9, but it's never easy for a committee, in my experience, to have an even number. So 9 or 11, either one would work. 10 was going to be tough. That was part of their rationale, and the other rationale they expressed was that they didn't want it to get too big. And so I think that went to the honoring this committee's decision that once we had a planner on board, we would at that point say we're far enough along on the process that it'd be tough to bring someone else on board as a new applicant. Certainly, if we lose a member along the way, in my understanding is with these committees, that's not unusual, that certainly they will continue to and I believe, Sue, you'll continue to take applications, and we would keep them on record.
Yes.
Such.
And the applicant has since taken out papers and returned them to run for selectman.
Okay.
I also just wanted to add, I'm sorry, Peter,
No.
that they did mention that we can have people help. Citizens can still help. They just won't be voting members of the committee. They can attend, they can take on tasks.
Sure.
They just will not be voting members.
Absolutely, and that has been the rule right along. I mean, I don't think we've had an agenda where we haven't had public comment, and certainly anyone who's interested, and certainly I'd encourage people that are interested to the point of submitting an application, that it would not be a bad idea for them to show up at meetings, keep themselves informed, and make recommendations under the comments section. Chris?
Yeah, I just want to add that in those discussions with the selectmen, I think that everybody should know that the selectmen thought this was a very well-rounded and diverse group and very talented group, and they were very comfortable with the composition and the number going forward. And I think that was also echoed by town staff, including myself and the manager.
Yes, and I appreciate that. And we did hear that the select board was comfortable with the integrity of this committee, the makeup of this committee, and the like. So I think going forward, I don't think there's any more reason to dwell on, who does what as a profession on this committee, that the select board gives us their full endorsement and believe that we have the integrity to go forward.
Good.
Okay. All right. Under new business, B is the question and answer with North Star. I believe we've got Ben and Kate here, and this was I don't know, I had a little trouble sending the emails, but you did receive the email that had the questions, the ones that I either recalled had been discussed at the last meeting, so I'm sure there's more. But if you're willing, what we'll do is just open this up to the committee for questions. I think most of them centered around understanding where we're comfortable with the makeup of this committee. We're comfortable with the expertise that this committee represents, but other than a couple of us, we've never been involved in this type of a process before. So thinking in terms of assuming something that trained planners do for a living gave us some pause, and we had some questions regarding assuming the tasks that you had mentioned that the committee could assume. All right, so I'll open it up to the committee for questions for Kate and Ben.
So maybe we'll just jump in. I know Kate had put a couple talking points together in the form of a PowerPoint. I don't know if it makes sense to share, or if we can just refer to those through the questions. But we've given some thought to the questions that we took a look at, that we made it over, but we're happy to field any kind of questions beyond that as well.
Did we see that PowerPoint in the last show,
No.
Last meeting?
Together
for this meeting? Would, any
We
reason?
can also just do it live if we don't need to, if you don't have to put it on right now.
What's the pleasure of the committee? You want to see a PowerPoint, or do you just want to talk
I
through
think
it?
it was 4 slides with
Tell them
some
that.
Yeah.
talking
Four.
points.
Just to kind of explain what each of the tasks are, so.
I'd be happy to see the 4 slides, but I'm a minority.
I'd be up to see the slides as well.
We're having them hook it up for you.
Yeah, I have it on a USB. I think that's what we did last time.
Yep.
Also, can I ask Sue, can you hear them okay, or do they need a microphone?
Yes, I can hear you okay.
Or
Can you hear Kate and Ben okay?
Kate and Ben okay?
Testing.
I can, but if you have the cordless mics, that would be better.
Or do you want to sit in the hot seat there?
Here we go. Yeah. Sue, we're taking your seat.
Where I normally sit, then you've got a mic.
Is this the hot seat?
Yeah, that's
Don't you feel it?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
Funny seeing
Nice to
you
see
here.
How are you?
Great.
Can you plug into, can you, well, I guess the best thing is use this computer.
Oh, yeah.
Let me sign you in.
Just turn it around.
It's just,
Ben, if you were to sit where Kate
I know, right?
was, then you'll have a mic as well.
yes, exactly.
I think she means over here in the.
Oh, in
Are you going to
The hot seat.
I'm sitting here, I think.
I'm just going to get out of the hot seat.
Nice try.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I.
And we'll get on TV in a minute, too.
We should have made better use of our pre-meeting time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Were there any
There is one on the
preliminary questions or comments while we get that going?
in the middle there.
No, I think we'll see what's on there, and it may answer
We
all
should
the
get you back
questions.
here and I'll get that. It'll
Okay.
take just a minute.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
I guess, Ben, I'd ask you this: is it in your experience that generally the comprehensive plan committees assume some of the tasks?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things we wanted to spend more time on, in particular about the chapters. It's not uncommon for communities to do inventory chapter work. I think a lot of communities who are kind of doing this on their own, or maybe in smaller places, will when they do a comprehensive plan, there is a state checklist that will help provide guidance on what needs to be in the chapters, the questions that need to be considered in the inventory work itself, and that can work. I think one of the things that we had proposed is that we would do all of the chapter work. It's essentially a big research project.
Yeah, I've got the PowerPoint up if you want to.
I'm happy to
You can
turn
keep
it
talking.
over.
I just wanted to let you know.
It's a big research project that involves getting links from the state. You get a state data pack when you say, hello, we as a community are going to take on this project, and they will send a state data pack, which I believe the town has.
Yes.
And it's a bunch of links to census data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Maine State Housing Authority,
Agencies, state agencies.
DEP provides information. So all of the building blocks, they'll provide links to those. So it's being able to track that relevant information down, do some analysis on it, and write the narrative that goes along with it. So it's I've called it a research project. It's existing conditions. It's the looking back on how we got to where we are today part of the planning document. And I think that is what essentially the work is. There's mapping tasks that are associated with that. We have in kind of our original proposal assumed that we would take on the lion's share of that and provide drafts for the committee to review and provide some guidance on that we would update over the course of the project. And I think that we had estimated 6 months, 5 or 6 months to do those inventory chapters. I think there's 11 of them that'd be relevant to Raymond.
These are the pieces that we all broke up and signed up for, assignments. In some cases, more than one chapter for folks. I think under the direction that we consider doing some of that ourselves.
Right, so I think we were kind of under the impression that this might be feasible for us to take on if we each took a chapter that interests us, and we could use the 2004 as a starting block, take the comprehensive plan from 2004 and say, okay, this is where it was then. Let's update all the information in there. So these were sort of our assumptions, but we wanted to make sure that our assumptions were correct. We didn't want to take on more than what was realistic. I think we all feel competent and able to do the work. We're just hoping we're under the right impression on what that would entail.
Yeah, so this is perfect, yeah. And I think the impression that we are under, from what you just said, Ben, might have been a little warped for some of us to do that level of getting hold of that state data and updating. As I was very much under the impression we certainly start with the 2004 as someone would find a Word doc version of the original comp plan, and we go from there kind of on our own, hunting through websites, maybe with some links and guidance from Ben. But anyways, let's hear you folks out. But
yeah, if I could just interject, we did have a presentation from Tom at the state planning.
Oh, great.
Oh, good.
So we had that. He referred us to the checklist, and we reviewed that, which seems to give a lot of guidance as to what needs to be included. So we've basically been around since August, and looking for something to do while we got a planner on board is some of the homework that we've done. And we went to the point, as John is referring to actually, after we got your email saying this is what you could assume as far as the chapters were concerned to do, it stimulated, I believe there was one question as far as in your email you suggested that this committee could do the first draft, and that then North Star would do the second draft. And so I guess one of the questions that came up at that discussion was, well, what is the first draft versus the second draft? So maybe if we could have a better understanding of that.
Yeah, I think so. To start off, so if you can definitely start with the 2004 plan and kind of work from there. The one caveat is that there have been changes to state requirements in the meantime, so there will be some differences between what was required in 2004 and what's required now. We put together a little more information. Just the average chapter is usually about 20 pages, give or take, and those chapters typically take our staff about 20 hours to complete, and that's going from getting all the data, processing all the data, doing all the data analysis, making charts and graphs, that kind of thing. So for volunteer committees, it usually takes people a bit longer, especially depending on how comfortable you are using different types of data sets, like census data and stuff, making those kinds of charts and graphs. Some people work with it all the time, and then, you're probably set up to have a really easy time with it. And as you're familiar with, there is the state checklist, which I did a little screen cap of here. You probably can't read it, but that is a really helpful guide to what needs to be in the chapter that the state is reviewing for. So when we get into sort of first draft, second draft, what we've done with other communities where the committee has drafted inventory chapters, they'll send us their first draft of the chapters, and then we'll review it going through the checklist, with kind of our experience as well, to see it, basically what's missing, what do we need more information on, is it something that we can just look up, or do we need to go back to town staff, and sort of go from there. And then we'll often then put it into a format where it can be shared with other town committees or the public or put online for people to review.
I think that's the working with actually a couple communities right now that have, one is nearing the end of the process where they've done all the inventory chapter work, and they have been a committee for about 2 years doing the inventory chapters. And
How's it look?
every chapter is very different. They're all written, formatted independently and that kind of thing. And that's really where we saw like our role as almost like an auditor, kind of comparing the chapter with the checklist and then formatting all of the chapters so that they had the same margins and same font and those kinds of things for readability purposes. Those are the roles that we would play is like the auditor and copy editor, formatter type role with an approach where the committee would lead on the inventory chapters. The other community I'm thinking of is kind of in the middle of the process where they said, don't worry, we got the chapters, and then they didn't have as many chapters as they thought they had. And so we've gone back and we're picking up a couple of the chapters that didn't get done by committees in the town. So it's possible. Communities do it all the time, but it can be a lot for folks who haven't done that kind of work before. That's the only thing, is like in the spirit of going into it with some eyes open and expectations. We're happy to provide guidance and advice and reviewing these things, but I don't know if that's what people like on this group if it signed up to do this summer, basically. So it's a decision you'll need to discuss and consider. We've got a schedule and a timeline, and we're prepared to do that. But if the folks in this room think that they can do that, that's an approach that's worked in a lot of other places. When we think of like volunteer burnout and the timeline of the overall project, it's often in that data spin cycle where you like do the inventory chapters, and then it's like, oh, new fiscal year, time to update these numbers. Oh, new census data, time to update these numbers. And at a certain point, you just need to like put a stake in the ground and say, this is the data we're using, and we're going to make a plan based on this data. So that's a major consideration. I think that one of these final bullet points here is that the inventory chapter work is the foundation for a lot of the public outreach and the future parts of the plan. So if that extends out, if there's time added to that portion, it might impact timing of outreach events. So like if you're planning on, our schedule has our first meeting in October, November, sometime before Thanksgiving. And if the chapters take a couple more months than we outlined, then it might not happen until next year, kind of thing.
So
Boy, I'm hearing some good information.
Yeah, but
sorry, I'm just curious. In thinking of, I wouldn't want somebody to be reading the comprehensive plan and hear one completely different voice to another, as they're reading through chapter to chapter. Is there any other sort of kind of hybrid scenario where we could do some of the research portion of it and help provide synopsis or data, collect, conclusions to the data that would help the drafts of the chapters, where we could work a little bit more closely together, but maybe it wouldn't all fall, maybe the whole doing all of the deep dive in the research and doing all of the drafting would be on the committee's plate? Is there something?
That might be worth talking about. I think I haven't. A situation exactly like that's not coming to mind. I feel like sometimes those chapters will get drafted by individuals or like a subcommittee, like 2 or 3 people work on the economy chapter, 2 or 3 people work on a natural resources chapter, for example. But I can't think of a situation where we have been, collaborating with staff, volunteers on the chapters themselves. It's more like, we can just, do a couple chapters a week in our office, or we can just kind of be on standby and wait for a pack of chapters to come back from the committee later this summer, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're all cognizant of what we'd be getting ourselves into. And this is my first time ever on a comprehensive plan committee. So what else sort of are our responsibilities? Because if there's additional things sort of on top of that, so if we're working on chapters, and then what else will we be working on at the same time? That sort of adds to that plate. I mean, you talked about volunteer burnout. We're all volunteers, we have busy lives. So if we're doing inventory chapters, what else are we doing on top of that? What else is filling our plate? I guess I'm curious about that.
Do you want to talk about
The public stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I guess, well, it'll sort of depend on whether, if the committee wants to write the inventory chapters, I sort of envision it, like Ben said, where we'll kind of step back and be on standby as you all work on the chapters. But the other sort of big part, and I think I'll just skip. So another thing that we had sort of given you as a potential task that the committee could take a larger role in, as well as the public participation. And this is really like the part where you all, we can't do what you can do. So like we can make the website and we can make videos and we can help with all the outreach, but there's an element of it where, you all have your networks and your connections within the community. You know the community better than we do. So that's where, to begin with, no matter how we do this, we'll be relying on you to help us come up with the right questions to ask, the right venues, the right kinds of outreach to do. And there's definitely an opportunity if you wanted to take on an increased role in the public participation, where we would basically help work with you to develop like the sort of prompts and meeting activities, and then sort of deploy you all out to hold meetings with like sort of smaller stakeholder groups. Like I heard someone say road associations, like that's a great sort of group, or other groups through kids' schools or other people you hang out with around town, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it'll sort of depend on how you choose to move forward with the inventory chapters. So like in a town where we write the inventory chapters, then the committee will review those chapters. So you'll get a draft chapter from us and you'll get to go in and write all the comments and be like, this doesn't sound right.
Boy, I'm going to jump in, Pete. Sure. I think to me this is a no-brainer. These guys need to write the chapters. Yeah. We review them, and our duty is to connect with the community and help make those information sessions happen, work our road associations. I'm on one. We have a meeting in June, and get them queued up to what's happening on the CompPlan. I work with this natural resource data most weekdays, most of the day, and diving in after work to tackle a 20-hour project for these guys, guaranteed for me would be 40 hours. Because they do it every day in a CompPlan content and format, and they're working with data. None of us would have the graphics capability to match a unified document, like you were saying, Jackie. And there's other stuff we can do, and I think the reviewing part would be critical, because we then get these unified document, and we get to say that perfect. No, that's out of line. You guys take that back. We know it's not like that anymore. And but I don't want to take the fire out of any eager CompPlan authors. So that's a very, single chair commentary, but I would offer that as there's probably stuff we can do better with connecting, use of our time to connect and deliver some of the product to the community.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, John. I guess, Ben, in your email, and this is where I'm still a little vague, so I'll ask you this direct question, which is the difference between a first and a second draft, the fact that you did devote a certain amount of time that North Star would still have to do the second draft and do that overview. I was thinking more in terms of, or our question would be, to clarify in the chapters, I did not see us doing anything more than taking the resources that you would give us and collecting the data, the raw data. And as far as implementation strategies or analysis, I don't believe there was anybody on the committee that was saying
We do that.
we've got the expertise to do that.
Okay.
We don't. I don't think we do. However, I think that there's a number of individuals on this committee that can look at data, whether it's demographic data or financial data or whatever, look at the checklist and put that in a form where you're not spending research hours collecting raw data. So that was more or less where I was coming from. Plus, we have the commitment from the municipal side that we would have resources from them as well. So GIS. As an example, we got an email from the IT coordinator for the town. What he was stressing was the fact that, if we're going to be paying for a lot of website construction and the like, just know that you shouldn't be doing that, because we have the capabilities here in town to do that. And so I guess cutting to the chase, one of the discussions that we had ongoing with the town manager was the fact that, quite honestly, he was hopeful, and I believe some of the committee members were hopeful, that we could reduce the expense to some degree of the planner. And I believe in your email, you mentioned that there would be this many hours that we would take off of our original quote. And so I guess what I'd ask the committee is, am I misunderstanding, what we were looking at as far as that was concerned? But to make it clear, I myself, my own perspective, was never one that was going to sit down and say, okay, we have the housing information, and we have the expertise now to put an implementation strategy together, or to put an analysis of the data together.
The data comes from a few different sources, and the data pack includes data that comes from federal and state sources primarily. One thing that I'm thinking we know we're going to need assistance with is local data. So when it comes to number of building permits issued in the last 10 years, or number of acres of land in open space tax programs, those kinds of things are not going to be found on the federal websites, right? So we would be working with the town on those things. That might be something that we could make a list of and kind of split off early and give it back to this committee and say, just run this data down for us, and when you have it, email it over and we'll work it into the chapters. So whether it's coming from the town office or someone on this committee trying to track that down from another source. What I had sent over to Dawn was really based more on that idea of, the committee would do the full chapter, and then we would leave enough hours in there where we could fill in the blanks, make sure all those questions get answered, maybe even write a chapter or two that, just based on the timeline, we could help out by making sure that those got done. It
I
wasn't.
would think even Ben, in the question was raised a little bit ago about the new chapters. What we're talking about is looking at the 2004,
Yeah.
using that as the template, understanding that there are new chapters that have come about that, we wouldn't have a template.
No template, yeah.
To work on. We wouldn't even necessarily know what new chapters would necessarily need to be included, what could be removed. I think one of the discussions that we've had a little bit is, do we call this the Raymond Comprehensive Plan update? Or are we writing a new, I know, we're playing a little bit with terminology, but we don't want to give the impression, I think it was at a discussion at the last meeting, that all we're going to do is change a few commas and quotes and citations in the 2004 plan and call it good. We know that that's
Yeah.
not possible.
I often think of an update as if you're going back within 4, 5, 6 years from the original plan. I think what we're likely to find is that some of the issues will be the same, but there's been a lot of new things, new issues, changes presented in the last decade and a half that would maybe tell a little bit of a different story than the existing CompPlan's chapters do. So from that standpoint, yeah, it's not going back in and saying, oh, now we have 3 trucks instead of 2, or we've got 50 extra kids in the schools or something like that. It's going to be a different look back. So
As an example, when I was looking at the 2004 comp plan for this town, there was a whole chapter on the financial status of the town of Raymond. And when I looked at other examples, I didn't find that anywhere. I found that it was incorporated into the economic overview and that they had folded it into that chapter. But literally, I'm reading this and my goodness, this is a full chapter. We're talking about our loan debt and what the schools are going to.
Municipal finance. Yeah.
Municipal finance. It was pretty extensive, and like I said, I couldn't find another example of it. The individuals in 2000, 2004 felt that was a necessary chapter. I couldn't find anywhere where it was a requirement on the checklist that it was a required chapter. It's all about the financial chapter. And so that had the municipal folded into it, as well as the businesses in town and all that other demographic information as far as finances are concerned. So, Chris.
So I agree with John. I think that this is going to be a partnership with North Star Planning. I think that we're looking to you both to be the team captains and tell us as the committee and staff what is the most efficient way to get this done for an effective cost, which we've looked at your proposal. We liked it. It was very well done. So I think what we're looking for is exactly what you kind of alluded to. Come up with a list of things that you feel that the committee could do efficiently to help you people write this, that's not going to slow the process down. One of the things you said that I picked up on was inventory chapters for one community took 2 years. You've got less than 6 months to get it done in your proposal that you've given us, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think this committee wants to slow this down by 1.5 years by doing the inventory chapters. I think that's your expertise to do the data collection and the analysis. And what we're looking for from you is to kind of guide us on what we can do. You got some really talented, you got real estate people, you've got conservation people, you got timber harvesters, you got real estate agents, you got members that have been in the community for a long time, and you got some good staff here, and I think it's a talented group. We want you to use that talent, but I think we're looking for you to tell us, hey, look, it's your turn to do this, and you can expedite this process by giving us the direction that we need. I think that maybe we were biting off a little more than we could chew with the inventory chapters, but the public participation in things, absolutely, we can all do that. And maybe there's other pieces, and maybe we just need to just refine that to be realistic.
Yeah.
We don't want to. Am I overstepping?
No, I don't think so, Chris. I think one of my goals tonight was that we could nail this down.
Right.
Because we're really, and I'll speak for the committee, anxious to get you on board.
Right, and we get some hard workers here, and we want to get to work. We've been
And
sitting here for 6 months.
in the absence of Dawn being here, I guess in a conversation that I had with Chris and Dawn, we kind of were empowered to say, you know, tonight you can finalize this. You can put your revised proposal in Chris's hands, and he can bring it to the finance director, and we can be on our way so that next month, actually, North Star is on board, and we're going forward. I wasn't as interested in the chapters from an educational perspective as I am in the other two suggestions that you had, Ben, which was the community involvement.
Sue might have something
Yes.
to offer.
So,
Oh, I don't want to interrupt. I just have a couple of questions, so go ahead, Peter.
all right,
Sorry.
just to finish up. So I was more from an educational point of view for myself, was interested in the community connection and also the department head interviews. And I believe that this committee doing department head interviews is going to give us much more understanding of what the town is looking for the next 10 or 15 years. And so, you know, I mean, I look forward to sitting down with code enforcement and saying, you know, what do you guys need going forward? Because, you know, this comprehensive plan is going to kind of pave the way for us to make recommendations to selectmen who ultimately have the decision on what we do and what they do on the municipal side and the departments. So,
Well, I have a question for Ben and a statement. And one is, we're kind of in my mind, from other committees and things I've dealt with, a unique situation. As Chris has said, and several others have said as well, this is one of the most amazing committees that I've been involved with the makeup of it. And they are literally champing at the bit. We have the problem of they want to get going and they want to do things, and that's a wonderful problem to have. So that's part of the impetus of this. And I'm wondering, one, before the chapters are finished, can they start doing community outreach and department head interviews and things of that nature? And also, when you work on a process like this, especially with a comp plan that's almost 20 years old, do you even start with that, or do you generally say, that's wonderful, we can review it, we can look at it, but we're going to start fresh? So which approach do you tend to take?
Handling that question first, I would say yes, we want to review that plan and understand what it says and get a sense of to what degree were the recommendations from that plan implemented. Are there sometimes it's really interesting to look at the current or the last comp plan and subsequent planning documents that have been done over the years, and if working in a community now where they said back in the 2000s that they wanted sidewalks and road shoulders on a certain road, and then they had a transportation plan that said they wanted sidewalks and shoulders, and they still don't have sidewalks and shoulders. So that is a recommendation in this plan, and with a few ideas on how to like start making that happen. So there will be some things, and this is not to get too far ahead, but I had alluded to the fact that the inventory chapters, there's likely to be a lot of updates. There's a lot of new information out there that has happened, that's occurred in town. I'm sure the last plan didn't talk about energy, climate, didn't talk about some of these other things that the community may want to look at that go beyond the state checklist in some instances. But the things that do stay constant are the values and the vision, and those are likely to not change. So we want to go back to the current plan and take a look at those sections in particular and say, basically bring those to the community again and say, you know, what parts of this ring true still, what parts need to get updated. So you can go to those parts of the plan and bring those directly, and they tie directly to what we're going to be doing now. The inventory chapters, I think, are going to look a lot different. The information is going to be very different. Population, housing, natural resources may not have changed too much, but some of the impacts of other things on those natural resources may be very different than they were back in the early 2000s.
What I can tell you, Ben, is that there's an excellent document that we have on our website from the 2004 Comprehensive Plan Implementation Committee, where there's an extensive matrix that suggests it really shows exactly what you've been suggesting. What I was surprised at is that there were 10 high priorities that I think in 2014 or 2010 when they finished the implementation document had not, at least in 2010, hadn't been reached. So to your comment, I mean, that document exists.
I think, thinking about Sue's first question, some of the things that the committee could get started on.
Yeah.
One of the things is looking at that, what you were just talking about, Peter, that implementation list and kind of giving the inside local view of what have we actually done since the last plan, what haven't we done, what of these things we said we would do are still valid, and what ones are we kind of like, don't worry about that. And then I think, a lot of the sort of laying the foundation for the public participation, so identifying stakeholder groups, starting to get lists together, email lists, finding, what your Facebook groups, how people are going to reach out to people, that sort of thing. And then the other thing we sort of usually deploy pretty early is an online survey, which we would definitely, we have some sort of like standard things that we like to ask because they relate to state requirements and what needs to be in the plan, but that's definitely something where the committee can help us be a part of and also help us reach as many people as possible. That kind of like actually getting out there and making those connections and reaching people is the part that the more motivated the committee is, the more people will respond, and then the better plan we'll have.
I think going back to our original proposal, there's a couple of things that I would revisit based on the conversation at the last meeting and this meeting, knowing that this group is likely to be more of a working committee as opposed to like the steering committee who just kind of tunes in once a month and says, yep, you're doing great, or no, we need more of this. I don't think is on the PowerPoint slides, but task 1 is the inventory and analysis. Task 2 is visioning and values work. And we had them relatively sequentially. So first inventory, then visioning and values. But I think hearing that the group wants a job and they're ready to dig in after being on the committee for a few months, I might try and amend this so that some of these things are happening, like while we are working on the inventory chapters, you could be having some of those more preliminary structured conversations with folks that can happen in the form of that survey that Kate mentioned. The other way to do that is through the public workshops and listening sessions. That's one of the highlighted things that I had indicated in the email, is that we had scoped out 2 of those sessions. And what we had envisioned those to be is, rather than just a big wide open community meeting, it would be exactly the kind of things that you were talking about at the beginning. Like, let's have a focus group type listening session with road association and lake association folks. And let's have a listening session with business community or summer residents or whoever they are. And you can probably think of 10 others in just a few minutes. So we could, rather than us do 2, we could train you up and give you some materials where you could go do 5 or 6 or as many of these as you wanted to over the early months of this project.
I think that's spot on. And, the fact is that road association, lake association agendas, those meetings are being set for, ours, like I say, is mid-June. And getting a 20-minute slot, half-hour slot. They already got business to do, like collect their dues and fix things that are what their association is about. Sort of wedge ourselves into those meetings, those existing meetings, not a comp plan specific meeting.
Right.
Now is certainly the time to start putting that wedge in. So that it seems to me that kind of information would be really helpful. But we're probably headed towards, as mentioned, at least one or two comp plan specific listening sessions that are well facilitated by I'm guessing us, with some support from North Star to keep it on the rails.
So the that portion of the visioning work is testing the current vision statement, asking questions about the future, high level questions. What do you love about Raymond? What are the biggest threats to the quality of life? Those big kind of questions about town. And I think that it is appropriate to have those early in the process. The way we've built this out is having that survey, having those listening sessions, and then combining that information, that early input with the inventory chapters together in the next part of this is like the bigger kind of community meeting that you'd have at the school cafeteria or the gym or somewhere where you could have a good sized group and just share what we've heard. Just, like, this is what we're hearing from people. These are the things that are important to people. What do you want to add? What have we missed? So that we can take that into the next part, which is the goals and policies and strategies. So if these are the things that we are aiming for in the distance, the Raymond we want in the future, like some parts will be the same as today, and some things need to happen differently in the future. So let's get that squared away, and then we will move on to, like, how do we start lining those steps up to get there. So rather than inventory, visioning and values, and then future land use, it might be more of we'll do the inventory while you're out there meeting with the summer folks and all the things that happen in the summer that you're a part of, and kind of meeting people where they are. And then we can have some of those bigger kind of convening things where we ask people to come to a place, later in the summer or early fall. So I think that would be great. And obviously, like Kate said, the more of that work that can be done, the better. I think we had only scoped out 2 of those, but based on some of those comments with the emails exchanged with Don and the energy of the group, it may be that you could do quite a number of these, smaller meetings, just kind of going to the school fund day, or going to the road association meeting, or going into the community where folks are going to be anyway. People who may not be able to block off a couple hours to come to the town office on a Saturday or weeknight in the summertime. Being able to go to where they are is something that this committee could really move forward.
So other questions for Ben or Kate as far as the...
Just to make sure I'm on the same page as everyone. So the recommendation is that the committee does not do the inventory chapters, and that we spend our time basically on the outreach and the other visions and values section.
And anything else they think of that we would be able to do and do well.
Okay.
So from a contract negotiation standpoint,
Yes.
I think maybe what we do, and Ben, help me out, maybe in the next day or 2, you come back to me and our finance director with a proposal that reflects the discussion tonight, and that, how would we proceed with the contract? Just trusting that the finance director and I will look after the committee's best interest, or do we want to see something again to the committee before we sign the dotted line?
Well, I'll express my own feelings on this, Chris, and it's been, and I think it was discussed early on, it's really not about the dollars. It really isn't. It's what we want is we want quality planners, and we seem to have those. And we want to be involved, and we want to be more than just a rubber stamp. And I believe if it includes community outreach, and it includes the department head interviews, and that's something that this committee can take on with the guidance from North Star. That for myself, I'd be happy with that. And
So my question was more about being responsible to the committee for
Yeah,
what
I think what
we
we-
end up with is for a
Yeah,
finished product.
yeah. And
And I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think Ben is, I hope.
Yeah.
And I think if you leave it up to us, in the next couple days, we'll put Ben on board, and then we can start scheduling and moving forward.
And what does the committee think about that?
Well, I think we've already expressed that we have full confidence in town staff to negotiate these sort of things. You know, they have been involved in every one of our discussions. You seem to have a good idea of what we'd like to do and how much we'd like to participate. So I have full confidence.
So what I'm gathering is, you had given Don Willard the authority to do the
Correct.
negotiations.
Yes.
I'm standing in for Don
Correct.
as he's out, and I will represent him well, and we'll move forward.
All in favor?
All in favor.
All right, good. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We're excited about getting started. I think it's great to kind of come into a room and talk about all the extra things that can happen with a committee that's willing and capable of, you know, jumping in and being an active part of the effort. Like I said, we work with a lot of committees that are great, but are maybe more of a steering committee kind of role. So I think that this is going to be a good project, and we're looking forward to helping.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear everybody is already like getting photos and thinking about like all these videos and
Right.
stuff, because you know sometimes that can be like
Pulling teeth
pulling
at the
teeth
end.
to get
right?
somebody to send me a picture of something. So it's great to see that you guys are all really excited about it, and I think it'll, you know, make it a even better project.
Well, I would say, from town staff standpoint, we're excited too. And I think Sue alluded to the fact that this is a very energetic, exciting, and diverse group. I think this is going to be fun. I think the majority of the people on this committee are in it because we love Raymond, and we live here, and we want to see the future of Raymond go in the right direction for our kids and grandkids and the future of all the residents. So, welcome aboard.
One last point. I think if we as a group are going to be targeting June through August to connect with our various community groups, it would be real handy to have a North Star's best short list at these early contact talking points or listening points, because we presumably wouldn't have to do much talking, and I prefer that actually at these meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what are we asking, you know, what are the top X number of things that we'd want to get their input on, you know, in a given setting for a road association, for a lake association? Obviously, I mean, that's kind of perhaps obvious, good lake quality, well-maintained road, but a little more depth on what we could cue them up for in these listening sessions. And it might be more than, will be more than, hopefully, than just lake associations, road associations. I mean, there might be church groups, or there might be other school groups, or so it might need to be tailored to those different 4 or 5 different types of groups.
Yeah, and I think, as you noted, now is the time to start getting on the radar of these groups that we would like to engage with in June and July. So I think one of the early things we'll need to do is come up with kind of a list of questions. Like we're not going to have a lot of information to share at this point beyond we're here because we're working on a comp plan, and this is what a comp plan does. And we want to know, we need to hear from you on some of these high level things, and then maybe a couple more specific things like this group is here because you're all part of a church community, or you're all part of a lake community, or you're all part of a school community. What are the best parts of that community? How can that community continue to thrive in the future? What are the biggest threats to life in Raymond as you see from the perspective of your community group? So I think that they'll be somewhat general questions, and they will be listening kind of activities, and we'll want to make sure that you're set up with ways to kind of structure those sessions and record, like keep track of what you're hearing, and then we can be responsible later in the process toward the end of summer or fall timeframe to kind of collate and organize the information so that we can present it back to folks in a way that makes sense.
Perfect.
I assume another portion of these activities would be collecting contact information and so that when we have a survey in place that they can then
Yes.
provide further information.
We love emails.
Yeah, so we usually set up, so I think it's part of your contract that we'll manage a comp plan website, and knowing that you have already started by collecting photos and making a logo, depending on how you want to move forward, but if you guys can send me all that stuff, we can get you guys a website up really quickly, and people can sign up for an email list there, and we like to do the email list, send out mass emails, and
We actually have an email list started on our website where
Great.
people can sign up for it. And I know that our tech would very much prefer that the website be incorporated into our technology.
okay, yeah, we can, I
I was
think,
going to ask that. So we have a
Yeah.
couple recommendations that that our technology department would like you to use our IT infrastructure already. Is that something that you do in other municipalities where you sort of use what we already have in place?
so we can do it either way. We can, get by, the Raymond Tomorrow domain and set it up that way, or it can be through the Raymond town website. When the only benefit to having us manage it is that it just allows us to not put another task on town staff,
I don't know what
But-
all of this means, but he says,
Talk about Kevin's
well, hold on, we can host any content management server or CMS web server on our virtual host environment. We prefer Drupal because of its flexibility and security. I understand the last statement.
Raymond
So I
has
don't-
probably one of the best IT programs in the state.
Yeah, so-
Basically, they have.
So would it be
Dave
reasonable?
should talk with Kevin directly.
Yes,
I
that's what
can
I'm
maybe
saying.
we
I was
can
going to say forward in the email.
Can
Yeah.
we link you up and that's
That would
something
be
that you'd be
great.
willing
Yeah.
to work with
We
us?
can
Okay.
definitely do that.
That sounds more favorable than me trying to rattle this off
I'll
here.
send you his email tomorrow, Kate.
Okay,
I think
great.
one of
yeah.
the other things I heard was the town has GIS capabilities that might
Yes.
be utilized here, so we can certainly discuss that as well. I think that there's some basic mapping that needs to be included in the inventory chapters, and then some additional mapping might be useful, and as long as the capabilities are there and it can be presented in a way that makes sense, and that's the main thing. So
Yeah, I believe we've got YouTube and we've got Raymond TV, so we've got all of those things already existing. I think that's what Kevin was kind of directing us at, was the fact that, a lot of these things already exist. He's very proud, and Frank's absolutely correct. For a community this size, from my understanding, is we have quite an extensive IT setup.
Yeah, we can connect with them and sort of figure out what tasks, how to make it all work together. But
Excellent.
Kevin and his sons together dug the trench from town hall to here to put
I
in,
think I've heard this story.
to put in fiber.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we certainly don't want to do something that's gonna, not coordinate with things that are already in place. So we'll certainly have that conversation.
Excellent.
Anything else? Yes, Sue.
One thing that Ben said earlier was talking about a vision statement, and I was wondering if that's something the committee could possibly start, at least start a draft of, maybe look at the last one, come up with ideas, and maybe on the next agenda, spend some time brainstorming and starting to put together a vision statement. Or is that what you were referring to, Ben?
Yeah, that vision statement is certainly something that we want to bring back to the current time while we see what we can use and see what still is relevant to people today. I know that for the next couple meetings, our plan had been to do some stakeholder ID, who are the people, where are the networks that Kate had mentioned, whether they're in person or online, how do we reach these people? Start thinking a little bit about kind of fleshing out the details of what we had outlined as far as creating a public participation plan, so that we can start, at least at a rough level, like saying, in September we're going to do this, in November we're going to have this meeting with people. And I think that getting some agreement on those things early will help inform how we proceed through at least the first part of the project. So this group will need to review the vision statement, certainly. I don't know that, we'll have to talk about what an agenda for the next meeting looks like, but I know that we were talking earlier today about how let's presume that May will be the first working meeting with this group, and how are we gonna jump in and start making progress on this so that we can get most of our work done this summer, so that when we get to the prime public meeting season this fall, we'll be ready to go with some good content and things to react to.
Sounds like a plan.
That's
So
great.
at this point, will you be taking over the issuing of agendas?
We can work with the committee chair on doing that. Connect with you about when you need them by and how how the magic happens. But
Yep, I'd be happy with that, Kayla.
Yeah, I'd be happy
If the committee
with-
feels comfortable, we've been setting the agendas, but basically, if you rough out an agenda, send it to us for review. What we do is usually reach out within 7 days of the meeting and get the committee to actually, if they have any additional agenda items to add, and that has to do with posting for the meeting,
Yes.
right, Sue? So,
Yes.
but yeah, if you want to reach out to us, we could certainly function that way.
yeah, we should. I can connect with staff, but sort of how you all are communicating with each other, so we can start to either be part of that email group or, whatever makes the most
Sure.
sense.
Yep.
As far as the communication with the town and the committee, what normally happens is the committee will send all their questions to the chair, or the chairs, I should say, we have co-chairs, and then they will send it on to Dawn, Chris, and I, and Dawn will figure out who needs to reply, or sometimes he'll reply, and then get back to the committee chairs, and they send it out to the committee. That's kept a lot of confusion out of the process, and doesn't have 3 different committee members contacting 3 different town staff asking the same question.
So it would make perfect sense is if you would also become part of that email chain.
Great.
That sounds great. So we should talk with you, Chris, tomorrow or the next couple days about.
Yeah, whatever time you
Okay.
need.
Yep. Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and we didn't discuss this at all, and I know I got a response back from Sue as far as the under new business. We also had
Be
the
part of the
status
discussion
of
on
the
impact
St. Joe's
fees.
intern.
It's just,
I know that what I did is just a little research on that as far as how the North Star might be able to utilize an intern to help as well. Just, I'll throw this out to the committee. What I did is I just went on the St. Joe's website and saw what course offerings they have, so that, we would obviously want to be mining those disciplines that would have some involvement with a comprehensive plan. So for their catalog for 22-23, what they had for degree programs is environmental study, history and political science, leadership and community engagement,
There you go.
leadership and sustainability development, and sustainability studies. So it would seem that's a pretty broad those are pretty broad categories as far as casting a net for one or more, as it was suggested from the St. Joe's presentation, of interns that would be that they felt would be interested. That piqued our interest primarily because I think at the time we were looking at what we might be doing as far as a committee is concerned. I don't know that necessarily things have altered that much with the discussion tonight, but I'd ask for the committee's sense as to, is that something to continue to explore? And does North Star feel that that is something that would be helpful? So committee sense as to, based on the conversation tonight?
I have a question about
Sure.
timing wise. I mean, the college school year is, about to end in another month or so. They've got a month left of the school year. Do they do this over the summer months, or would we be thinking this is probably something that's going to be, starting in September, lining somebody up at the beginning of the school year?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. Sue, do you know?
I believe they have some in the summer, because they do have some taking summer classes, but I believe most of it is during the school year.
Okay.
I think if we potentially want to poke the option a little bit more, we could reach out to the professors or the department heads of those disciplines and discuss whether they have any students who are looking for independent study internships of some sort, because they may want to line them up now if they're going to start them in the fall. So I think, or at least get some department heads on board so they know that we're looking into that for either the summer or the fall.
Yeah, Sue, was my understanding is there was a coordinator at St. Joe's. I think she gave us a presentation early on.
Yes, she did. And she basically said once we know what the tasks are, they could match that up with the discipline. But in listening to what you were saying about what they're studying, some of them might be able to teach us a thing or two as we're looking at updating sustainability, for instance, and other pieces. They would have probably access to the latest and greatest research and whatnot. So that might be something to consider too, picking their brains and having them come. But also with some of the community outreach, one of the thoughts I had as everyone was speaking is as Joe does various recreation activities, often it's big things where possibly we could have a tent kind of presence and talk to parents as they're going by and talk to other folks there to get the word out. And that might be those kind of outreach activities might be something that the St. Joe students would be interested in, especially if they're looking at public speaking and getting out into municipalities and things of that nature.
Good thought.
The other thing that we could have them do is, if we're going to be at all these meetings and have all this data, we're going to need to record it and centralize it and put it all in
Yeah, I
one
think
spot.
that'd be good.
And I think that'd be a great spot for them to try to make an outline or notes or take what we do get, because it's going to be coming from a lot of different sources, and put it together for us.
What do you guys think as far as an intern? Is that something that you see there's value in?
I think there could be, and it's maybe a little chicken or the egg. Sue was saying, let's figure out the program and then we'll get the intern. And I think sometimes it's also, having had, when I was in Wyndham, I had an intern or two from St. Joe's, and it was just kind of like, well, let's see who's available and what they're interested in, and then we can, there's a zillion things to do, just like there's a zillion things to do with this project. Let's find something relevant for them that'll be a good learning experience as well, because they're here to get something out of it too. So I think when we get to the fall, there will be much of the data and research work will likely be done, but will be.
Can you use the microphone?
Hot seat. Much of the data and research will likely be done by the fall, but we'll be heavy into the public participation work at that point. So someone with, that more public focus, and I'm looking at Sue here around, like, I forget the name of it, leadership and policy or leadership and.
Yeah, I think they were saying leadership and sustainability and leadership and community engagement.
So I think, I could certainly see a community engagement interest kind of meshing well with where we'll be at that point in the project. But also, if we're going to look at more of a subject focus on sustainability, and I mean, I get a little bit of a sense from the last meeting we attended that that's something this group is interested in incorporating. We'll also be in the fall and winter thinking about goals and strategies and policies, and that's really where we're thinking about specific actions the town can take to move policies forward. So if there's a policy around energy use, or a policy around water quality, or those kinds of things that might jive well with having a student intern with some experience in those things, like digging into what are the specific techniques or actions or things that the community could do or the town office could do to help move some of those policies forward. So I think that of those programs, both sound really interesting to me, and I think depending on where the student comes from and what their program is, that will help shape what they do. But I think either of those would be pretty relevant.
Okay, so do I get a sense, Sue, is this something that you could inquire of that coordinator as far as these, once again, I just got these off of the internet, as far as their existence. I know with college programs, sometimes, it's like whether or not the program's going to happen in the fall depends on whether there's 2 or 20 people. So is that something you could reach out to the coordinator and just inquire?
Yeah, now that we have a little bit more direction, I feel a bit more comfortable doing that.
Okay.
But they really wanted to know what kinds of things would we have and what time frame. So
Sure.
Prior to tonight, I didn't have that. So I will reach out to her and report back at the next meeting.
Terrific.
That's great. I think community engagement, I mean, that's going to be a biggie. We got experts, we got a lot of the other sectors, I think, covered. But getting the town of Raymond to come out and talk to us, so we'll benefit from having some interns on that task to help us out.
Alrighty, just to finish up the agenda here, next meeting is May 3rd. Same time, same place. Right, Sue? And I don't see,
Hopefully I'll be there next month.
we look forward to you being back. And hopefully Dawn will be back by then as well.
It should be.
Good, good.
We both intend to go on the bus tour.
Excellent, excellent. And there is no public?
No.
No. All right, so I'd ask, is there any committee comments?
Yeah, I have.
Yes.
At the last meeting, John mentioned the name of a book that he thought we ought to read. What was
Yes.
the name of it? Nomad Century. And I thought about that, John, when I was reading the Epic Times. The headline in Epic Times says, experts issue new climate warnings, but past forecasts hurt credibility. And it's about a study that is being done in terms of climate change. And one of the issues they come up with is that about every prediction they ever made never came true. And they've got about 40 of them that they listed in here. The first one starting in 1939. And what's interesting, from 1939 until 1988, all the global climate change predictions were global cooling. We were going to have another ice age. After that, it shifted, and then it became global warming. And then at some point, it became climate change because this guy named, I think it's Tony Heller guy, found some doctored data about climate temperatures. So they also mention a book written by, let's see if I got all this, Born Lomborg, and it's called False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. So I guess I'd say maybe we ought to read that book too, as well.
Excellent.
Appreciate your patience with me.
No, that's good, Greg. But did they cite the Nomad Century as one of the recent
No, I don't think they did. Al Gore's in here a couple times making predictions that never came true. One of the highlights, I don't know if you want to listen to me read, but this little caption says, Phantom Meltdown. Experts have long been predicting that the Arctic would completely melt in summer. By various prognostications, the ice sheet was to disappear by 2008, 2010, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2018, and 2022. In fact, the lowest ice extent recorded was in the summer of 2012, and it was about 1.5 million square miles. The record hasn't been broken, which means it's bigger now than it was in 2012. That's what the Epic Times says.
The Epic Times. All right. Well, good to have the contrarian view, Greg, and we appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I'd say that that's what makes this committee great, is that it's not that there's just one voice. There's differing opinions and different information that's going to be brought, and I think that's one of the keys to formulating a comprehensive plan that reflects the entire committee. So thanks.
Absolutely,
thanks for that, Greg.
That's good, Greg.
Called balance.
Keep it coming.
Keep it
coming.
Greg, would you mind sending me the name of that article and the date it appeared and the name of the periodical? That way I can put it in the minutes, and if anyone wants to find that, they're welcome to.
That's great.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Well, one observation I would have is I recently heard that for hundreds of years, explorers in the world were looking for the Northwest Passage. They could never find it, and that was because the Arctic was frozen over. But now there is a Northwest Passage, and the plus side of that is that actually transporting fossil fuels, it actually has less of a carbon footprint.
Smaller.
So there you go. Any other comment from the committee? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I was at the last selectmen's meeting. I wrote a memo about impact fees, and they asked me to give you guys the Reader's Digest version of the discussion at the selectmen's meeting.
Great.
Because they felt that impact fees is something that the committee should speak to or research during our sessions. So I'm just going to read my memo real quick so that we can all go home early. During this year's budget process, it became evident that the town has increased services to its citizens. The recreation department has been added, the library's been added, public works, codes, and public safety have all grown. This growth has increased the need for more infrastructure. Public Works is looking for funding for a new garage. The rec department's looking for new tennis courts and some work at Tasseltop. I'm suggesting that the town look at implementing or possibly implementing impact fees to help with the pressure that growth puts on our town budget. My experience with impact fees came from my service to the town of Wyndham. They've had impact fees for recreation, sidewalks, open space for over a decade. While I was there, they added a public safety impact fee, a municipal impact fee to offset renovations and expansions to these facilities. These impact fees are not like real estate taxes. They are a one-time fee established by the town and are collected when a new building or subdivision are approved or assessed only once. The fees are part of the permitting process and established by the planning board at the time of the approval of the project. Impact fees are not going to be a silver bullet for our current budget, but are a way to save for the future and a means of securing funds to ease the burden of growth and development. The reason I thought that it was important for this committee to look at this for the future is the development and growth is part of our charge for this comprehensive plan committee. And I know that Ben's had some experience when he was in Wyndham, when I was in Wyndham, and just an example of the difference in the towns. Most of the towns south of us have impact fees: Gorham, Scarborough, Portland, South Portland, Berwick, York, and they've had them for a long time, and they help pay for the infrastructure that the pressures of new development, whether it's pressure on the school or the public works department or the rec department. And by charging an impact fee, for example, when I started in Wyndham my first year, single family home permit was roughly about the same as Gray and Raymond. After they added the municipal impact fees for, depending on where the project was, a 302 improvement project or the sidewalks, the municipal and the public works, the permits went from $1,200 to $1,500 per single family home to $35,000 to $4,000. And I thought, whoa, this is really going to slow growth down. People didn't bat an eye. They just passed it on to the consumer. And when you're building a $600,000, $700,000 house, a $5,000 permit fee is negligible. It doesn't sound it, but it is. So what they wanted me to do is present it to you guys. You guys, we can talk about this for the next 2 years and talk about how that might affect the comprehensive plan in the future. But they also directed me to go directly to the planning board, which I'm going to do at the next meeting, because they want to start talking about this now. They don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to start collecting some of these fees maybe. So if you guys have any thoughts, it's kind of early, but if you do, let me know and I'll pass those on to municipal staff and the planning board.
Great.
That's good info.
Thanks, Chris.
I think I have just a quick comment. I think my question would be just a distinction between how it would, even if, my concern wouldn't necessarily be around new residential development, but small business development too. Because I know that, you know, if there's like, if a hair salon goes in and a sewer impact fee,
Yep.
it's gonna
It
be.
can affect, I mean, Ben
Yeah.
can speak to this, it can affect development, and it can incur costs on somebody doing, say we did a sidewalk improvement impact fee for Main Street, where we have half sidewalks now, and somebody want to put a business down on that section,
Yeah.
there may be an impact fee that they have to pay for a certain amount of sidewalk. But it's all figured on the impact. So it's supposed to be relative to the project.
Yeah.
I know there are some negative pieces that I was aware of in Wyndham. Somebody would be building a brand new, or taking a space and changing the use, and they might have to add a sidewalk or put those funds into the sidewalk fund, impact fee. So there are pluses and minuses of it. I'm not suggesting that we do any impact fees. I'm just saying it's a dialogue the town should have.
Yeah.
And I'm not a proponent of it. I'm just saying that we're having trouble with our budget, and the town needs to look at creative ways to help pay for some of the impacts that are happening to the town.
I think it's an interesting idea, and just making the distinction, the small business is the thing that jumped into my head first.
Absolutely, and that would be a concern, and that would be part of the discussion, absolutely.
It'd be helpful to know how many towns in south of Augusta have some degree of.
Well, we did some data collection, and Melissa from the town office did present a packet to the selectmen, and I'd be glad to bring that to the next meeting or email it to you tomorrow, because there was a whole list.
I'm going to say the next meeting would be plenty faster.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do recall at the meeting where Ben and Kate were here, that Kate, you mentioned some experience with the town that had developed a solar.
Habitat.
Yeah.
Impact fee, yeah, for solar development.
Yeah. So that's is more in the line of an environmental impact.
Yeah, so I think that with impact fees that are, do you want me to talk into a microphone? Am I gonna
Yes.
get yelled at?
Yes, please.
Yeah, like Chris said, there are a lot of different kinds of impact fees. When you look at environmental impact fees, they kind of serve two purposes. One purpose is to use financial pressure to encourage people not to develop in really high value habitat areas because they'll have to pay for it. Then the second part of it is if they are impacting high value habitat, they have to pay the town for it, so the town can put it in a fund to use that money to preferably buy other land to conserve.
So, and that was my understanding, that if you use the example of a solar farm, which might be a small business or considered a small business, that if the wood on the lot is actually a reservoir for carbon, that some might interpret that as being it's a carbon tax, because the tree's got to be cleared in order for you to put the solar farm up there. So once again, as you're saying, Kate, it's the hopes, I understand, are to direct it to lower value property. And if I look at the state's recent comments as far as developing sustainability and the like, one of the things that they want comprehensive plans to do is to identify high value versus low value properties and develop steered development towards some of those lower value properties. And so from an environmental perspective, that means, once again, I guess the argument would be, you also don't want to take a farmer's field that's beautiful and stick a solar farm on it, but because that field or that agricultural land has a higher value. So it's the attempt, I believe, is to direct it to more of a lower value property. Kind of like, I guess the example would be the solar farm in Gray.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right along the highway. I mean, once again, before it was a solar farm, I believe it was a wildlife sanctuary, but
It was.
I was going to
Yeah. It's a parkway.
Birds can still fly over it, right?
But
Well, like an old gravel pit, that's
Yeah.
a great place to fill in and put a solar farm. But I think that's sort of just trying to guide some of those things to happen on maybe already degraded pieces of land or things we can't put other development on.
Well, thanks for that, Chris. We look
Yeah,
forward
well,
to more information
I think
on
there's
it.
going to be a little more
And,
conversations about it.
I'd say, stay tuned on at the planning board level, because they're the ones that'll be implementing it before
Right.
anything.
And I can add to the next e-packet all the information that the select board were given.
That's great. Appreciate it.
Sue.
I just have one quick committee comment, just so that we're all on the same page and we know where money comes from, because I was looking at the proposed budget, and trying to find out, well, where's the money for North Star and CompPlan? So it is under the TIF, which for anyone who doesn't know, that's the tax incremental financing. And so I, was kind of interested in researching that a little bit, because that was new information to me. What is this TIF thing? So all I'll say is, Well, there's a revenue source, isn't it? That's a pile of money that could be used to help the community. And from what I understand, it's very specific as what you can use it for. But the property that's been set aside in Raymond that is designated as TIF is the Portland gas line, pipeline. So that revenue actually is, it's a bucket. Just for everyone's knowledge. And by the way, it's our bucket. Any other comment?
That's great. That's good. That's helpful.
Yeah. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.